He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. These things all apply to me, babe. Did you know that?
Or Satan.
Okay. That's uncalled
Santa.
for.
I mean, I meant Santa.
It's the Christmas episode. Let's do it.
Let's get into that.
Before we get into today's episode, just wanted to remind you that in the description of the video below, we put links to all of our social media accounts.
You can always reach us with questions or comments about this episode at marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com.
And finally, if you want to support us financially, there is a link to be able to do so at the end of each of the descriptions of our videos. Now, let's get back to the show. Hey, everybody. I'm Santa Claus.
Or Nathan. And I'm Andrea. And you've joined us for a Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time that we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about that, and how we live that out practically.
Do you know...
This is a more practical episode.
That's right. If the Santa Claus was real, I would intentionally push Santa off the roof.
I don't doubt that.
I just want to become Santa.
Nathan loves Christmas and all things to do with Christmas.
And to not have to worry about my weight would be phenomenal. Yeah, so this is an exciting episode for us. It's one that we try to refresh every couple of years, and we did an episode on, I think it was mostly Santa-focused a couple of years ago, and I believe it was on our, at the time we had a show called Family Friday that came out on Friday. There's a little more family-oriented as far as parenting kids. And so we talked a little bit about Santa because we get this question from parents and couples that are starting to kind of move towards the parenting route. How do we deal with the Santa issue? We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but we're not going to talk about that till the end. Before we talk about that, there's two other things we want to talk about. We want to talk about how people think about Christmas generally, right? Because I tend to find
People
that there are
Christians?
three camps of this. Well, we're going to deal with both. So I want to talk a little bit about just Christmas generally and how we can really get this right. Then we want to talk a bit about the commercialization of Christmas in the middle, and then we'll talk a little bit about Santa and some of the other fiction around. Oops, hope I didn't screw that up for anybody. Some of the other fiction around Christmas and how we ought to be thinking about that as Christians. So, look, this is a practical episode. If you run a word check on your Bible, you will not find Santa
Or Christmas.
Right. So, or Rudolph, or any of that. Right. So, I'm saying this up front that this is obviously our, I would say, informed opinion based on study of the Bible and thinking about the Bible as a whole. And so, certainly, there's room for disagreement there, which make these episodes fun. So as you listen, if you have disagreements, please put those in the comments below, or if you're listening on podcast form, I'd love to have you go over to our Facebook page and leave your comments there. Send us a message.
We're always evolving. Maybe next year we'll do an episode about, oh my gosh, we've been enlightened. All of that, don't listen to us.
I doubt it. But you're certainly welcome to give it a go. So first thing we want to talk about, babe, is just Christmas in general. And I find that folks tend to fall into, not perfectly, but some version of these three categories. There is the camp of Christmas is entirely a secular deal. There's no Jesus stuff involved in it at all. That stuff is hogwash. Of course, this is held by, the secularists, right? The atheists or, whatever, those that have an agenda against the Bible and things of God, that this is a complete construct of society, shouldn't have anything to do with anything related to anything biblical. Mm-hmm. I have found that people in that pool almost have lost that argument entirely. I don't find that to be a convincing group at all. In fact, I find those folks oftentimes to feel a lot like attention seekers, where they're just trying to get people to listen to their, hot take on Christmas. These are the folks that tried to get rid of the Merry Christmas and move to the Happy Holidays years ago, got a little bit of traction, and then is more or less a complete crock. I mean, look at this point, our pastor in church this morning just pointed out, and I thought it was a really interesting point. All year long, you can go in stores that are playing rap music or pop music or any other secular music, and you go in this time of year, and you're likely to hear Christian themes coming out of their speakers, even if they've tried really hard to be a secular company. Yep. So, bottom line, I think everybody at this point understands Christmas has a spiritual connotation. They may not like it. They may be vocal about not liking it. But of course, in being vocal about not liking it, they admit it to be the case. So I'm going to pretty much leave that group of people alone. The last two groups of people are those who are trying to balance the secular reality of Christmas in a secular world, Christmas in a secular, highly commercialized United States, with an understanding of the spiritual backdrop of Christmas. The other third group of people are those typically Christian folks who are it's only being celebrated in December if it's directly tied to a spiritual connotation, right? Directly tied to Advent, directly tied to the celebration of the birth of Christ, or some other, spiritual connection. So these are the folks that, you talk to them and you're like, well, do you have a Christmas tree? Yes, because, the cross was made out of wood. And Christmas trees are also made out of wood. So we can have, a Christmas tree in our life. Well, do you eat candy canes? Well, yeah, because there's a red stripe around the candy cane like the blood that Christ shed on the cross, right? I mean, it's everything becomes a spiritual thing. Well, we're called to be the light of the world.
Mistletoe?
You and I are called to make out. And we've talked about that in this show. So, don't be trying to deprive me of my mistletoe. But, there's this group of folks that everything has to be tied into
Jesus' birth.
To Jesus' birth.
Got it.
And so as we think about this, babe, how do we... Well, first of all, which camp would you say you fall into, and
none?
Why?
What was the middle camp, did you say?
Those that are trying to figure out how do we balance the reality of a secular.
We always know what Nathan's got on Nathan's mind.
Right. So you fall into neither of those.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you think about it?
I struggled for years with, and I was kind of a little bit of a Grinch about Christmas, but partly because it's just a lot of work. But I struggled for years with that. How do we balance the Jesus birth side of things with the commercialization and what the world has taken Christmas to be now? And I finally just really got to a point of having peace with that and really seeing this more as a we are celebrating Jesus' birth. Not that this was the time of his birth, but this is the time of year where we celebrate Jesus' birth, and that's fine. But at the same time, we're also kind of celebrating with the same themes every year, this Christmas time of year, with the trees and the lights and the song. I mean, the songs are, a lot of them are Christian songs, but the trees and the lights and the eggnog and the cookies and all that sort of thing, which I just don't see as having anything to do with Christ's birth. And I'm good with that. Just as we celebrate, we have a fall time of the year where we're doing hayrack rides and pumpkins and all that apple cider, all that kind of stuff. To me, Christmas season has a part of it that's celebrating kind of just the season and some nostalgia and some creating memories for my kids of gifts and trees and lights and all this, all the stuff that you think of. But then there's a separate part that happens to be at the same time where we're talking about Christ's birth, and we're having a time of being thankful for what that means for us as Christians and how that changes us as Christians. But it has nothing to do, for me, with the other part, really, of the commercial, the worldly part of Christmas. And so for me, I finally got to a point where I was like, hey, I'm good with the way it is. I'm good. I'm good with the presents. I'm not worshiping the Lord with presents. I'm not worshiping the Lord with a Christmas tree. But when I go to, like tonight, I went to a hymn sing at our church where we sang hymns to the Lord. I'm worshiping the Lord, and I'm thinking about about Jesus' birth and what that means in my life and how that's changed me, and that is a worship of the Lord. But it has nothing to do with the typical holiday, the holiday type things. Yeah. So I came to a point of just having peace with that, and it's just two separate things that I celebrate alongside each other. And I don't have a problem with trying to make them work together.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts here. First of all, the Advent time, which is the time we celebrate leading up to Christmas, is a reflection on Christ's birth, but really the Advent season isn't even about Christ's birth. It's about waiting, right? Anticipating Christ's ultimate return.
Right.
So when we celebrate Advent, for those who may not know, when we celebrate Advent, a lot of times we think, oh, that's about Jesus' birth. It's not. It's about reflecting on Jesus' first coming, but waiting with anticipation as his people for his second coming. Here's my big thing
with Christmas in general. If you're acting different
in the Christmas season than you act the rest of the year, that's hypocrisy. And we need to stop doing that. So what I mean by that is, look at if you're one of those families that really goes out of your way to not do presents and all those things during the Christmas season because you're making a stand against this secular society, here's the reality of the matter. Secular society doesn't care, right? Because they're not paying any attention to you. Sure. But those around you that see you doing that see you making a stand. And the problem here is if you live lives of generosity the rest of the year, you've made yourself out to be kind of a weirdo when it comes to Christmas. And I'm not saying that from a secular standpoint. I already said the secular folks aren't paying any attention to you. I'm talking about to your family, right? To your kids, right? Like, we celebrate Christmas, and the way we celebrate the present part of it and some of the, fun things where Andrea and I sacrifice our time to do additional things for the kids and create these special moments and these special memories for them is because we want to point out to them, like, hey, there is a big part of Christmas that is about generosity. Mm-hmm. And that does tie into the traditional Christmas message, because Christ's ultimate sacrifice to come down to earth was about his generous love and his commitment to providing a way by which we could have communion with his Father, even though we were children of wrath prior to that. We were dead in our sins, and he gave us a way to be alive. That's what we're doing here. But we would also be the first ones to tell you we try to make a point with our kids of living lives of generosity in June and August. And February.
Yeah, and really, it's funny because the rest of the year for us is actually more about generosity towards others, and the Christmas season is more about generosity towards each other.
Within the family.
For us, right. And certainly towards others too. But really, the rest of the year we're turning more outward from our family in generosity, and the Christmas season we happen to turn more inward in generosity towards each other.
Right. The last thing I want to make a point on this, and then we'll move to the commercialization piece. But there's a passage in Philippians where Paul talks about our citizenship is in heaven, not here on earth. And so often I've heard Christians take that to mean like, then we ought to be like, who gives a crap about
Hands
what
off
happens here
with-
on earth?
Mhm.
And I see that come up particularly in Christians where, or on Christmas, around Christmas, where Christians are like, hey, my citizenship's not here, so I'm not celebrating this thing that society has created, that I'm not doing it because my citizenship's in heaven. But one thing we need to understand contextually, Roman citizenship, which is what Paul had, if you go back and look at Rome, citizenship was a privilege, but it was also a responsibility. And the responsibility was this: wherever you go as a Roman citizen, there you take Rome with you.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you're living in Philippi as a Roman citizen, you need to make Philippi like Rome. If you're living in Corinth as a Roman citizen, your responsibility is to make Corinth like Rome. So citizenship wasn't my citizenship's in Rome, so,
I only act Roman in Rome.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. It was, your expectation was to take Rome with you wherever you go. It's partly why the Roman Empire grew the way it grew. So for us, that's the context in which Paul's talking about our citizenship being in heaven. The underlying responsibility being, it is not our job to check out any time of the year on secular society. Now, does that mean we should be getting involved in all areas of secular society? No, although I would say that's between you and the Lord in some areas, and Paul points that out in his letters. But specifically, it is our job to bring our citizenship from heaven, to bring heaven down to earth to the extent that we can in a fallen world. And so for us to take this self-righteous stand of, well, I'm not going to do anything Christmas related, and people are going to see me not being involved in Christmas stuff, and they're going to go, oh man, there must be something to this God thing. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, because we have a really unique opportunity at Christmas time, because people understand that it is a Christian holiday. We have a unique opportunity to really bring Jesus to people, and they seem more willing to allow that.
That's right. And here's the problem. When we go, because the backdrop for everyone, secular or not, is that Christmas has serious Christian connotations. I've heard all the arguments about that it's actually a Druid holiday that was taken over by Christians, and every article you send me, I'll send you another article that says, no, it was actually a Christian holiday that was taken over by Druids. I wasn't there. I don't know anyone that was there. There's a lot of conflicting stuff going on there. Frankly, I don't care. And here's why I don't care. Paul specifically dealt with whether or not Christians ought to be eating meat sacrificed to idols. So in that case, there was no conflict. Paul said, no, this meat really was sacrificed to a false god. Should we eat it or not? And what'd Paul say? Eat it. Mm-hmm. Like, you're hungry. Who cares if it was sacrificed to a false god? If Christmas is a Druid holiday, who cares? Right? Yeah. The gods of nature the Druids worship aren't real.
They don't exist.
So now we have an opportunity to celebrate Christ, Christian virtue, the birth of Christ. We celebrate that now, even though it didn't happen now. And Christian virtues like generosity, like family, like self-sacrifice, these kinds of things. We celebrate those now. And when we punt by going, well, Druids and stuff, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Well, the message we send to secular society is that, hey, if you just make a clever argument, then we'll bail on defending our Christian values. And we'll just give it up to the secular side, and you can have it, and we'll go over here in the corner and sit quietly and not celebrate it because you've taken it over. And I think it's disgusting. I don't think there's any place for it in Christian society. I think we ought to be the ones waving the banner of Christmas, and I don't think it's inconsistent for us to celebrate some of the secular trappings of the fun time of the year with our clear backdrop of the celebration of Christ.
That's great.
Okay, so then how do we handle this commercialization side, right? Because this is probably the one I hear the most people talking about, and that is this idea of giving gifts, and
Sure.
this is just all about spending the most money on stuff, and if we do presents for our extended family members or our children or each other, we're just basically admitting that what's really important in this life is stuff. And it's clearly not in the Bible.
Of course.
Right? We would agree on that. So what do you think?
Well, I think that's probably going to be something that's different for everybody, because what's most important always is your heart attitude. So is the heart in your home, we're all about things and buying the most expensive things and making sure that whatever, we have the coolest presents as compared to our neighbors, or whatever that is. If your heart is, man, we're all about the stuff, that's probably something you should look into.
Right.
And
man
change.
Judges by outward appearance.
The
Lord judges the heart.
Right. So if that's your motivation, there probably is a problem there that you need to work on as a family. If your heart is, we love being generous. We love knowing Nathan really loves the gift time of this year, because he gets to know people better by the things that they want. And so he's super curious what people get for Christmas, because then he's like, oh, I have a better look into who you are, because I'm understanding, like I'm seeing what you enjoy and what you like getting or what somebody likes to give you. So for Nathan, that's a really fun motivation for the gift giving.
No doubt.
Part for him, and yeah, the whole gifting side of Christmas.
Yep.
So that's, of course, not a bad motivation. In our home, we do not buy our kids gifts pretty much except their birthday or Christmas. It's just the way we operate here. It's rare.
Lots of kids.
But
we're generous in other ways, and we make sure to point that out.
Yeah. It's rare that that our kids get really anything special besides birthday and Christmas. And so it's fun to have an opportunity to gift them things that they enjoy. And so we use Christmas as a really fun, like, hey, we want to be givers, and we want to think of others and give them an example of that. And then, like I said, really the other parts of the year, because we don't really buy anything for our kids the other parts of the year, we're really more outwardly focused. So it is kind of fun at Christmas for them to be the receivers,
Yeah.
or for our family to be the receivers.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Anecdotally, I have not met very many adults whose parents did the sort of no Christmas gift thing that look back and go, man, you know what? I really learned a lot about keeping my priorities straight and keeping God the main focus of Christmas by the fact that all of my friends and extended family got gifts on Christmas and I got nothing.
Yeah, I knew some kids when I was younger whose parents chose not to do the Christmas thing. They just avoided it altogether. And those kids they always struggled when school started back up and people are talking about, what did you get for Christmas?
Yeah, you feel like a pariah.
They grew up to really hate Christmas time and have some real bitterness towards the way their family approached Christmas and all that sort of thing. So I think that's something worth thinking about if you're somebody who's like, oh, we avoid Christmas stuff, the commercialization of Christmas altogether. It's worth thinking about. What is the message really that you're sending your kids?
Right. And is it the one you intend to send? Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Last few minutes then, babe. How do we handle all this extra stuff, right? Because maybe we're going, hey, okay, give gifts. I can understand, the reason for doing that. Totally on board with Christmas being a Christian holiday, and we ought to be defending it as Christians. But how do we deal with Santa coming down the chimney, the movies that push sort of the completely secular, right? Like I understand, and believe me, I'm be the first. I know the entire story of Saint Nick. I know the entire story of Santa Claus and the background of. So I know all of that.
Oh, I think the movies are easy to. For me, those are an easy they're fun. Movies are almost all movies are fiction. It's a fun story,
As long as you make sure to tell your kids, even the little ones up front, that this is a fictional movie and Santa does not exist. Is that right?
I think that's the way to do it.
I know you do.
Nathan and I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree on Nathan's view of Santa. I don't like the idea of pretending that the whole Santa thing is real, because I don't like misleading my children. Santa, of course, cannot be real. We know that as adults, because nobody can fly around the world all in one night and go down chimneys and provide gifts for every single little boy and little girl, and no one person can know the goodness or not
Scrooge
of every child in the world, all that sort of thing, or even know how many there are and where they all live. Okay. So of course, as adults, we know that that's not possible. I don't like misleading my children, and I don't like trying to pretend that Santa, who cannot possibly be real, is real, and then also trying to teach them about Jesus, about the Lord, that has some of those characteristics and qualities, and has characteristics and qualities that humans cannot have, because he is the Lord. And trying to say, oh, but yeah, God is real, but I lied to you about Santa.
And Santa can't be real because that's ridiculous, So I don't like the whole idea of trying to pretend that Santa is real, because I want my kids to believe me, and
I want them to not ever wonder about, these are similar, but yet but one's you're saying is not real actually now, and one the other is. So
yeah, this is the classic argument against Santa, and we're Andrea and I, and this is not news to Andrea. Here's my argument against that. I don't believe those people actually exist. I don't believe there's ever been a child that as an adult went, well, I'm not going to believe in God because my parents said Santa was real. I think it's a red herring. I don't believe that person exists anywhere ever. And I think kids, as they get older, understand there are fun just things, right, in general. I mean, when you're a little kid and you pretend to be an astronaut and you go, oh, man, it'd be amazing if you were actually an astronaut. They don't grow up and go, man, Dad said I could be an astronaut, and he didn't tell me that I wasn't smart enough, or to me, there's just not. That's not real. What is real are a whole bunch of people that carry around bitterness because Sally Mae walked into their second grade class and made sure to let everyone in the class know that Santa doesn't exist and that their parents are all lying to them. That is real. And, again, is that a huge section of population? No. Do I think we ought to be lying to our kids? No. Do I think lying to your kids is a necessary part of the Santa thing? No. That's the point. You don't have to have one or the other.
The way that we deal with it, and I would prefer to just tell our kids there is no Santa, but Nathan wants to kind of do the Santa thing. So the way that we do Santa is we never tell them there is or isn't one. We just let them believe what they believe. And if they ask us questions, we just use the Socratic method and ask them a question back.
Right. So do we do packages from Santa? No. Do we do stockings that we say are from Santa? No.
The funny thing is, I'm not sure why my kids even believe in Santa, because we never leave cookies out for Santa. They never get any gifts from Santa. Their stockings they know are from us. So, but they don't ever really put two and two together. I think because we just don't make Santa that big of a deal.
Right.
So they're not thinking of Santa that often, but they never get anything here from Santa because I bought them their gifts. I want the credit for that.
Yeah, and like we'll watch the like NORAD like Santa tracker thing on Christmas Eve, but again, I'm not telling them like, hey, this is Santa. Santa is all around them.
I think
so. I don't have to say one way or the other. And here's the other thing: I think it's really important for our kids to ask questions and figure things out for themselves. You know what? I don't want them to know Santa's not real from me. You know what else? I don't want them to know God is real solely because of me. Mm-hmm. Because I might be wrong about some of the things I believe about God, and they need to figure out how to ask those questions for themselves. Mm-hmm. That's important. And so and our kids go through the same stages. They're Santa Kool-Aid drinkers when they're 0 through
10,
4 or 5,
12, 13.
Then stop. Then 6 to 10 or 11, they do the like, I don't think Santa's real anymore. Right, Dad? Like, right? Santa's not real, right? Like they have this like, they think they're figuring it out, but they want to cover their bases. And then whenever they reach the age where they go, okay, this isn't all adding up, then I bring them on the inside and say, hey, we've tried really hard to never lie to you about this, but I want your brothers and sister to be able to figure it out for themselves. So let's make sure we're not lying to them. Let's ask them questions when they ask questions, but let's also not go out of our way to spoil the fun of, this sort of fictional thing that goes on around Christmas.
I do think a really great conversation to have with our kids is, what are the origins of Santa?
100%.
St. Nicholas.
Yep.
That's a really great conversation to have, especially in regards to generosity and really crazy generosity and thinking of others and not trying to bring glory to ourselves.
Right.
In that. So that is a really great conversation to have of what are the origins of Santa? How did that get started?
And whether you do the Santa thing or not, it's a really cool thing to contrast the idea, the sort of mythos around Santa with the reality of God as revealed in the Bible. Because sometimes, and this can be dangerous, if we're not careful, we allow Santa to sort of be a picture of God. And that's not accurate. In fact, in so many ways, Santa's really the opposite of God. Santa, remember, he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. He's keeping tabs, right? You qualify for gifts if you've been good. If you haven't, you get coal. God doesn't operate that way. We've all been bad. Ain't nobody bar Jesus making the nice list with regards to God, because we see that through the lens of the Ten Commandments, the law. We've all failed. And praise the Lord that God isn't like Santa, giving us what we deserve as a result of our actions. Instead, despite us being on the naughty list, God, through the personhood and life and death on the cross of Jesus Christ, gives us an opportunity to make the Lamb's Book of Life, right? The sort of nice list with regards to eternity with God. We have an opportunity to make that list solely because of the work Jesus did on the cross and through nothing we could have done on our own. Yep. And so, man, I would encourage you this time of year to make that connection, whether you do the Santa thing or don't, right? Nothing in what I just said says anything about the reality of Santa or not. But it does, even if you do the Santa thing, it does point out to your kids, hey, Santa's cool, but man, God's so much greater. Because Santa's going to give you what you deserve, and praise the Lord, God gives us freely and abundantly based on his mercy and grace and not through our own merit.
That was great.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching us, you'll see I have my Santa jumpsuit shirt on. So I'm ready for the holidays. Really appreciate you guys being here. Love to have your thoughts. As always, leave your comments down in the comment section below. Pop over to our Facebook page, Marriage by Design Podcast on Facebook, and let us know your thoughts there. We would love to hear them. Tell us where we're wrong and why Andrea is a Scrooge.
And I'm not anymore.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. So appreciate you being here again. Thanks for joining us. Have an excellent week. And remember, God is for your marriage.